When I was 16, I was throwing 78 miles an hour, and I had a limiting belief that held me back from throwing in the 90s and beyond. When I was 16, I was throwing 78 miles an hour, which is quite slow, right? There are 16-year-olds throwing 95, right, these days. But I was kind of satisfied with where I was at. Why was this? Because I was surrounded by people who were throwing, slower than me. I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and so there were people around me throwing, this is me, and there were people throwing 75. Maybe there was people throwing 72, even lower than that. If someone was throwing like 78, then, that was considered like pretty good at 16 years old. This was because I grew up in a place where baseball wasn't the biggest sport. And so I kind of looked around at my teammates and who I was playing against, and 78, I was like, okay, that's not too bad. But what I failed to realize at 16 was that in the grand scheme of things, 78 miles an hour is slow. It's really, really slow. Like there are, 12, 13-year-olds throwing 78 miles an hour these days, which is crazy, but it's just a brutal reality. At 16 years old, I should have been aiming to throw 90 plus already, because that's what all the big time players were doing at that age. And so this was a limiting belief that kind of held me back, and I'm going to explain a little bit why this can be such a problem. But for someone like you who are watching, it doesn't have to be that you're in Sydney, Australia. You just look around you, and chances are that the people around you don't throw very hard, because throwing 90 plus at 16 is pretty rare. But you know what? It's necessary, and that's what the best players in the world are doing. And if you're someone who wants to get to the next level, the highest levels of, go Division 1, Pro Bowl, and then eventually to the big leagues, then you gotta compete against the best of the best, not the people around you. And so I had an athlete the other day who, he was around similar to me, and I was talking to him on the phone, and he was like, yeah, like velocity isn't really like the biggest focus for me right now. I throw 78, I'm like 15, I'm more focused on command. But I challenged him. I was like, okay, you throw 78 miles an hour as a 15-year-old. Why aren't you continuously trying to work on velocity development and trying to push for higher and higher velocities? And he was like, hey, I'm one of the hardest throwers on my team right now. And my counter argument to that was, are you one of the best? You don't want to get complacent because you're one of the best players in your team or in whatever, your state or your vicinity, your area. You want to continue to strive to be able to compete against the best of the best, because that's how you get to the highest level, right? And so what I kind of told him was like, go look up the best players in your age group. And he did. He goes and looks it up. It's a website. I can't remember if it was like All American Games or something like that. And, the best 16-year-olds are throwing 90 plus. Some are even throwing 95 plus. And he was like, oh dang, like I throw 78. I throw way, way slower than the best of the best. And I was like, that's my point. And obviously I'm not trying to encourage, hey, really push velo and get into aggressive weighted ball pull downs and stuff like that. But it's more the mentality. It's more the limiting belief that he had to where, oh, I'm one of the best on my team in my area, and so I don't really have to be working on it. Okay? And so this creates a huge problem when you have this limiting belief, because we kind of touched on it a little bit. You stop trying as hard. You stop being as obsessive about it. And so what happened to me when I was throwing 78, 16 and I felt pretty good about it was that, I didn't go as hard as I could in the weight room. Like I wasn't really doing the right stuff to actually continue to gain velocity, because I had this limiting belief of, oh, I should be good. I'm one of the best in my team. I don't have to push as hard. But the turning point came when, like the athlete that I talked about, I looked up who was the best of the best. And I saw the PG All-American game. And this game had guys like Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, like all of these studs. What did they have in common? Well, they all threw 94 plus. And this opened my eyes. My goal is to get to the Division 1 or professional level. So I have to compare myself against the people who are actually doing that, the first rounders, the full ride scholarship type guys. I need to compare myself against them, not against the people on my team, because none of them are going D1. None of them are going professionally. You know, going D1 and professionally is very rare these days, especially with the limited roster spots, limited scholarships. But the internet is a really powerful place to where you can go out and look and research who is actually doing these things, and then you can compare yourself against them. So once I made this realization that 78 miles an hour is actually terrible, it's not good in the grand scheme at all, what I had to aim for was 94 miles an hour. And so this became the benchmark. This became the goal. It was no longer, oh, I throw 78 miles an hour, I'm the best on my team. You know, I'm just gonna focus on command and pitchability and stuff like that. It was, no, I need to get from 78 to 94 miles an hour if I want a chance at competing against the best of the best and getting to, you know, the Division 1 professional level. And so when I established this, in my mind, it was like an obsession started to come around. I was researching. All of my free time went into how do I get to 94 miles an hour? Because that lit a fire underneath me saying, okay, this is what I need to get to. I can't be satisfied with this. I can't even be satisfied with something in the middle of like 88. That wasn't gonna cut it. You know, a lot of you guys right now who are gonna be watching this are probably in the middle of like 88. And 88 is such a dangerous place to be in because it's not terrible, but it's not elite. And so you're still getting opportunities here and there. And so it's very easy to be kind of complacent with if you're like in the upper 80s. 88 was my least favorite number because it was just away from 90, but people were like, oh, you still throw 88. This is my least favorite number, and it should be your least favorite number as well. If you're throwing 88, you should be throwing 92. Don't be satisfied with 88. It's not even 90 plus. The amount of guys that I talk to, college guys who are, oh yeah, I'm 88. Oh yeah, I'm upper 80s. And I'm like, okay, is gaining pitching velocity a priority for you? And they say, nah, not really. I'm getting outs. You know, I have a good sinker. I'm upper 80s, which is hard enough. There are even big leaguers who are upper 80s. And my response to that is, there's maybe one or two big leaguers who throw 88, and they have elite command. I can only think of one. There are probably more. But Kyle Hendricks, he has one of the best command in the whole world. Are you going to be that guy? Are you going to have the best command in the whole world? Or do you actually want to work to get that velo up and be someone that's more desirable and be a little bit more sexy to scouts and recruiters? Because the brutal truth is, right? Velocity is the #1 metric and the prerequisite to get to the next level. No matter how good a command you have throwing 78, low 80s, you're not going D1. Unless you're a submarine guy. You're not going to get drafted throwing 78, 82. No matter how good your command is. It's just the brutal reality of the sport right now. So I say this all to kind of light a fire underneath you to be like, if you're 78, even if you're 78 to 88, in between there, if you're not up to the standard of the best players in your age group, then you're going to continue to work. And once you be complacent, once you're satisfied with where you're at, that's when you start making backwards progress, and the time you have in your career is going to get really limited. You know, the talent level is so high these days. We're in an era of skill inflation where everyone is getting so much better. The bar is getting higher and higher and so much better. And to get to the top of the top, you need to be in like the top, I don't know what the percentage is, but 0.1% of all baseball players. Right here, it gets funneled down to the top 1%. And then, I mean, Pro Bowl is like a crazy small amount, and then the big leagues is the most minuscule amount that you can think of. And so, if you're stuck in here and you're comparing yourself around people that are in here, then you're gonna stay there. And don't be surprised if you don't go to the college that you want, if you don't get scholarships that you want, if you can't go to Pro Bowl. But if you're comparing yourself to people here and you're here, then you're gonna find a way to get up here. It doesn't matter if right now you don't know how to do it. It'll become a goal and a mission of yours, and it'll become an obsessive thing to be like, okay, I'm going to find a way. This is what happened when I was throwing 78, and I had to get to 94. I found a way to do it. And how did I do it? I researched. I even flew out to Driveline and lived there for 6 months in a house full of like 10 to 15 athletes. And we just ate ground beef every single meal. And we just talked about velocity development. And when I was done with that, I came back to Australia, and many days I'll just skip school to go and throw. That's kind of like the obsessive thing that's required to get to the top level. And once I got here and I got into Pro Bowl, guess what? I subconsciously lost that obsessiveness. And now I'm out of baseball. And, you know, I'm going to make a comeback. I truly believe that I can get to 100. And why am I trying to throw 100 miles an hour? Well, it's because of this. I'm 24 years old now. What are the best of the best 24-year-olds doing? They throw gas and they throw strikes. Okay, that's what I need to do. That's what I'm comparing myself to, and that's where I need to get to make a comeback. So look at yourself right now and be like, okay, objectively, there's no emotions involved. Where am I right now compared to the best of the best? Am I in the top 1%? Am I in here? Or are you in the masses? The average players, that players where the careers won't really go anywhere. And if you are here, then that should make you mad. And you know what to do next? If you are here, then recognize that. Tell yourself, hey, it's not acceptable where I am right now. I need to find a way to get into the top 1%. And I'm going to do everything that I can and dedicate all my free time and mental energy and even physical energy to get to this 1%.